and recording has started. So welcome everybody back to a new school year and a continuation of our Perfect Connection meetings. We'll go around and introduce ourselves. Also, as we're doing that, please, I'll put it in chat, but if there's anything that you would like to for us to talk about today, then we'll start kind of a running list and we can come back. I'm Susan Walker, formerly from the, retired from the University of Minnesota, but still very, very active in parenting education and animal care and my women's choir, all those things you do in retirement. And I will pass it over to Jennifer.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jennifer Wenner. I am at Minnetonka ECFE. And nothing particular topic on my mind. We had our teacher meet and greet at the preschool and ECFE last night. So I'm still kind of just buzzing with all of that happy, bouncy toddler and preschooler energy. I'm glad it's Friday. And I will send it to Nancy.
Great, thanks. I'm Nancy Trahey, and I am the parent educator for Albany Area School District, which is north and west of St. Cloud, just a little bit. We're a smaller rural district. And I retired from my full-time work a year ago, June, but proposed to the district that I continue in parent education because I was the only one with a license and available. So it's been a good fit on both ends. It's a good transition. And so it's just a couple of days a week. And I'll pass it to Yuji.
Thank you, Nancy. My name is Yuji, and I work for Family Kind, a nonprofit in New York City. So I do have a topic today, and I want to talk about the composition for parent educators. I feel it seems like we don't have a standard in the field, and many parent educators, I believe they are not paid fairly. And I feel if we want to grow the field and make it a career, I mean, the only place is Minnesota, right? And then that is, it's because it's only place, it's, you know, the other states, they don't have that kind of system. So I want to, you know, talk about this. Thank you. Yeah, I would go to Nikki.
Hello, I'm Nikki Murphy, and I am a parent and family educator in Robbinsdale area schools and home visitor, visiting kind of under two visiting umbrellas. So Laura, you'll probably be able to relate, but the hug home visits, and then the birth through third grade alignment piece. So I've got a couple elementary schools that I'm assigned to for families of kiddos up through third grade, and that's me. And Becca, I don't think you've gone yet.
I'm Becca Herring. I'm a parent educator in Maplewood, Oakdale, North St. Paul. This is the beginning of my 5th year teaching. And I've got 3 kids. I talk about them probably more than I should as well. But I'm finally at 0.5. So I'm kind of interested in your topic, Yuji, because getting fairly compensated is something all teachers nationally struggle with. But definitely me, I'm teaching 7 classes and that comes to 0.5. So I feel very, very busy and mediocrely compensated. But you know, I love what I do. So that is me, Carissa.
New laptop, got to figure out how to do things again. I'm Carissa Wade. I'm Mounds View parent educator. I don't have a strong topic. Um, yeah, was that it? It's Laura.
Hi, again, I'm Laura. I'm a newly graduated and hired parent educator for Osseo area schools, primarily working in home visiting. I'm going to put my questions up here. There are a lot, but the two bold ones are the ones that are coming to the top of our conversations because in our program, we're working to take a very small home visit program and ramp it up, much like Minneapolis has done, from hundreds of home visits a year to thousands of contacts. So the vision is big. Unfortunately, the person who kind of held the vision left the position and isn't there. So there's kind of a gap, and so we're all trying to figure out together and kind of take what work was done and move it forward. So I'd appreciate any conversation that we have time for on any of those questions, but especially the bold one.
Thanks, Laura. So you said especially the which one?
The ones I bolded in black.
Okay, so, in chat, like we can see them. And
Yeah.
so what I see is home visiting is bolded and then the first two.
Yep.
Okay, great. So I guess, so from my understanding, so one thing we should do is go around and just identify who does home visiting in their districts, because I don't know that it is all done. So I definitely know they do in Robbinsdale. See Jennifer, yeah, see, so it's kind of, so I think that's one thing too, is that some practices will vary depending on the district. So you'll probably find more of a cohort with some districts versus others. So, and then I'll just throw out, I have a very quick question about technology training and support. So those of you who know me, like in the past, that's been a major area of my research, has been technology integration in parenting education, and my own data is pretty much pre-COVID in terms of training, and then of course what your COVID experience was like, and using technology while you were practicing during COVID. So I just have a very brief question, which I'll throw out at the end. In fact, maybe what I'll do is, as we're talking, create a little quiz, a little poll, so it'll be easy to do. So we have talking about compensation and parenting education standards, which is huge, and then also then home visiting, and so how would you like to go? Do you want to, which one would you like to talk about? I'll leave it open to you all.
So one thing that I think about in terms of home visiting is in our conversations with the Perfect Connections, it has been kind of a common theme that for districts who have not or that do not have yet robust home visiting programs, many parent family educators that have been here have said, God, I wish we could increase our home visiting and the presence of that. And so I kind of wonder if that is still, I mean, even it's a good topic. People may have interest in that, even if it's not something that they can answer how their district did it, but perhaps what their district may consider.
I know in my district, we say we do home visiting, and it's in our brochure that we hand out. But like I had one last year, like we don't market it at all. So I think that when kids go to screening, if they have concerns, the people who do the screening kind of say, hey, we have this, maybe if they remember to, and that's kind of it. So I'm in that big camp of people whose districts semi-support it, but marginally because of like keeping track of budget things and not having done it very much in the past. But we say we do it, and I would love to do more.
So Jennifer, you seem to
Yeah,
be.
I was gonna say, the reason why I said so is because we kind of have two different tracks or kind of pockets for it in Minnetonka. One is through HUG, Helping Us Grow, that I think Nikki could speak to a lot more than me. And my partner does the HUG home visiting. And then the other is what Becca was kind of mentioning when our families go through early childhood screening. If they're asking for or are recommended parent ed referral, then I get all of those. And they could be at the home, so that might be a home visit, but a lot of them are at our preschool anyway, so the parents just want to meet me at the school, but I'll meet them wherever. So I do those consultations. But then we also have, and I should say, Becca, whenever we have turnover of the screeners, we have to kind of get in front of them again of like, this is who we are, this is what we do, please, if you're kind of wondering about whether you should offer home visit, because then I can talk with the parent and decide. So those are pretty, I can't even guess the percentage, but I mean, I probably do, on average of the school year, a couple a week, maybe one a week of those. So a few dozen over the course of the year, but then it's, again, we also do HUG, but that's not my show. So I can't speak to it very much.
So if I may, I'm noticing too, like there's two tracks, and HUG seems to be a fairly established process. And we have I should say 3 tracks. HUG, we have kind of an established referral process through either special ed referrals or through screening or teacher referrals. But I think the piece we're trying to grow is more of a universal access of any parent without needing a referral could access additional parenting support. And I'm wondering if any districts have done that, worked on that. And the piece of this that I'm curious about is how it's partially marketing, but what do you call it? Because we're finding in this very diverse system that is Osseo area schools, not everyone is comfortable bringing people into their homes. And is home visiting a limiting term for what we do? Is there something else we call it? And as I'm doing research nationally and even internationally, home visiting is the term that's used, but we do want to expand it to be virtual and this already happens, but so that families know they can have it in the home, at the library, virtually, on the phone. And just wondering if any of you have dealt with manage some of those dynamics too.
I'll chime in and share that we talk about one-on-one visits, and I can give you a link to the page on our district's website because HUG is mentioned. That's not to be confused with early intervention, Help Me Grow. That's not a referral, it's universal. And we seek to visit all prenatal and families that have babies birth through age 2 in all of the participating districts. But then on our website, it also shows you if you're just looking for parenting support. So that's another term that we've used as parenting support. And that I would say that gets a lot of hits too, because it feeds into a spreadsheet and the link is on our page, but the elementary schools are all putting that out as well. And so that's been a nice way to, for our district though, our parent and family educators, each are assigned to our elementary buildings. And so each building knows who their PE is. So I think that kind of reminds them too. And they're not usually, sometimes I get the direct email saying, by someone, I have a family, because they knew to connect in with me. Other times it comes in through the spreadsheet. They knew to share that link, the family put it in, and then it pings us anyways, and we get the referral that way. But to address what you said about where these visits are happening, we let them know the visits can happen in their home, for us, the building, like the New Hope Learning Center, where we're doing our ECFE classes, anywhere in the community, as long as it's in the district boundaries. So I can go to the library, we've done it at a park, but they can also happen via Zoom. And so we are not limiting at all where the visits can happen. I will say that if it is a helping us grow visit, we have packets, we have hug kits that we bring out in advance of the visit. And so we let our families know if they choose Zoom, that we will be dropping off a kit in advance of the visit. So that then when we have our visit, we can go through it together via Zoom.
So I have a question for those of you using Hug then. Tell me about its source. Is it a grant to offer those visits that you've received? I'm still using Jane Ellison's, not all the time, because it's more custom than that, but Jane Ellison's First Steps curriculum that she developed here in central Minnesota. It was a United Way grant that gave some of us, a number of families per year. Like our small district had 2 at the most, and St. Cloud had, I don't know, I think 4 or 5 families, that kind of thing. And it's still a good curriculum. It's just, I don't know if there's something new. So I should let you answer. How does a district access the Hug curriculum?
So Hug is not a curriculum, actually.
Okay.
Helping Us Grow is a universal visiting program. And like I said, we seek to visit all families that are prenatal, that have kids between birth and age through age 2. And we're not a long-term visiting program. And so what we are is a liaison for the resources and connections in the community. So we seek to bring them into programming, whether the programming that's right for them. So it could be CFE classes, it could be exposure to knowing that the libraries have story times. It could be about resources. If they do seek and need maybe case management, or they need long-term home visiting in their home, we refer to Hennepin County's Healthy Families. So we've got our Hennepin County counterparts, and for case management, we also connect into Hennepin County. And so it just depends on, right, every family has their unique things that they're seeking. Sometimes we're meeting families who are navigating postpartum or perinatal mood disorders. It's just, we meet everyone. And so some families, we meet them one time only. And other families, we will go back. And so if there's a goal that we're working toward, or there's follow-up, we go back. Whereas an ECFE visit, usually there's been a stated goal in the first place. It wasn't universal. It was a specific need. And so then you're working off of those goals and documenting what that looks like in terms of progress and what we need, the next steps, and what we need to reach those goals.
Okay, so I'm following all that. That sounds similar to but I'm still looking for, where is the source of Hug? What is it? Is it a Twin Cities effort? It's not statewide. When you said universal, at first I thought you meant, statewide or nationwide or. So there's no answer to that question?
Nikki, is it through Hennepin County Healthcare? Is it a grant?
No, I was putting it,
grant?
it's here now. I put it in the chat box.
Thank you.
I was putting it there, but the link that I put earlier has it too. So the link that I put first, if you click on that link, you'll find that the parent support page goes right to Hug. It also goes to a Google form, but now that Nancy's asking that, I just simply put the page for Hug.
Okay. So really it's just districts in the Twin Cities area then that are offering it and have this resource base. Okay. So not available.
Yeah, actually it's a really good point, because actually the majority of Hug's funding comes from Hennepin County.
Got it.
Collaboration. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thanks. I appreciate that help with that understanding about what Hug, how it started, who's the fiscal agent, or, so do they give you funding then for staff people to do visits? Yes. Okay.
So it's on a reimbursement model. So the districts sign kind of a contract through Hug, and then Hug reimburses them for each visit at a certain rate. So I suppose it would probably be different per the PE, because if you've been here for 25 years versus you've been here for 6 years, you may have a different rate of pay.
Got it. Got it. And that's kind of, I guess, what our local United Way was doing. They were giving us some funding, but that's sunsetted 5 years ago, maybe. We no longer have an additional funding source to support home visiting. We used to access some federal dollars. I did home visits, early childhood through 12th grade, families with children and the entire spectrum. And I also was our homeless education liaison. That's the thing about a small district, it's kind of lots of balls in the air. But again, the federal funding was cut. And so we obviously still are doing homeless ed support. But it's one of our title teachers now. It's not a parenting educator. It's not me anymore. And I do have a very small amount of hours that our district chooses to set aside to make me available to still do some visits, but it usually only, unless it just depends every year. Some families, I have some that just want it a couple times, consultation on a specific subject. And some years, last year I had a family that was referred to me through ECSE that I met with once the child once she turned 3 in January through the end of the school year. And she'd like to continue with me this year, but it's hard to decide to designate my entire small little allotment of hours to that same family again. So we've agreed to still meet monthly, but that feels like a drop in the bucket. And it would be great if our district had access to some more funds. I'm not asking for answers about that or solutions. It's just, yep.
I think you're bringing up some points that we're getting into, is that, and that's my questions about duration and frequency. And I think we're finding that in the past, perhaps some very long-term connections were made and continuous visits were happening. And this gets into a question about how do you evaluate effectiveness, and when do you refer on to what Nikki mentioned, long-term support, maybe through the county. But I'm wondering if within these parent consultations, if there's been guidelines and parameters within your district around the frequency of visits, how many in total to work on a goal, and then, or I should say, how duration, and then frequency, how do these happen once a month, every 2 weeks, and what is the most effective way to go about meeting these short-term kind of acute goals that a family has?
So I guess I'll speak to the situations with the visits, really the age 3 through 3rd grade visits that I get to engage in. And the answer to how frequently we meet depends on what the goal is and how long it would take them to attain that, or to touch on it, or to see behavior change. And so because we know the behavior change doesn't usually happen right away, we usually go for 2 weeks approximately. But make ourselves available at any time for calls and a quick email or questions, clarification, that kind of thing. But the initial check back, I will ask families if they wish to reach out to me to let me know when they're ready to meet again, or if they want to set that time and that meeting right then during that first meeting. And I think I get about 50-50. And then of the 50% who say, I will schedule with you later, I would say about only half of them will then reach out and schedule that later. I would say the other half probably reach out and let me know via email, like a progress, or ask a few questions, or just touch base on seeing some behavior change and feeling like, yeah, we're on our way.
Yeah, I just threw in there. So home visiting, being the older person in this group, home visiting has been around for a really, 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 really long time. And as I've mentioned, there's a lot of research that sort of started from nurse home visiting And so there's public health nurses that of course been doing their thing, but budget cuts, and then they stopped doing, in just depending on the district. But then there was the nurse home visiting model that was a parenting education thing, right? And was very tested, and federal government still funds programs that use the old David Olds actually is the name of the original researcher, the nurse home visiting program. And then through the years, like Head Start has home visiting, like every, and then there was the Hawaii resilience research where there was the birth to 3 home visiting that was very, and and that echoes everything that's being said, right? And so it isn't specifically for children with developmental disabilities, right? And it primarily was, and you see this in Australia, New Zealand, I mean, other places with Indigenous communities where there is a combination of risk factors that families face. And it could be poverty, it could be employment, whatever, homelessness. And unfortunately, it was sort of lumped into the prevention of child abuse, right? Rather than family well-being and child well-being. And so I think hopefully that language has changed over the years. Anyway, but Laura, to your point about, best practice, there's so much out there specifically on home visiting and the testing of it. And there's been so many agencies that have been given dollars to do home visiting that they are held to standards and to benchmarks for their own success. Now, whether or not we all would agree that that's the best way to measure success, right? And then there's also measuring success, and there's also implementation effectiveness, right? There's also training, the whole 9 yards. So anyway, just saying that I just put in one link, and because the federal government as one source will sort of branch you out to a lot of the other programs, the places that do it. There's home visiting conferences every year. There are books on, and I honestly, I mean, speaking of the Minnesota program, that was something that had been requested by students, was that we integrate more on home visiting, into the curriculum. And if you look at the, resources, time, stretch, the whole thing, but it's very legitimate. I mean, it's very, and if we look at the standards, for parenting educators, and all that, like home visiting is a component of that. And so, earlier curricula for the parent ed program, and hopefully other parenting ed programs, usually can speak to the Concordia program. Is that the one you did? Like how much home visiting they had in there. But it's, this is a really healthy discussion, because you're getting the way that it operates now in Minnesota from other parenting educators in ECFE. And, but as with anything, as you identify that you want to sort of scratch the surface and look at effectiveness or look at measures or things like that, there's a lot of resources out there. Yeah.
Well, thank you, everyone. I really appreciate getting some insights and getting a direction to go, and now some resources to maybe reach out to one-on-one. And I don't want to take any more of the group time to discuss home visiting, but you've really kind of set me on a good path of where to go next. So I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think it is, it's a topic that has been touched on in the past, and certainly in programs like Nikki's, that, and as you mentioned, Minneapolis, that have significant, we can put that on our topic list and revisit it again. So
sorry, Mike,
Yeah.
I bumped the mute button kind of late. And I think, Nikki, was it you that said MNAFI's considering having a session on this topic? And I'm so glad to hear that. That would be wonderful. And not that topics in the past haven't been relevant to home visitors, but it would be nice to have a focused discussion about it. I think some of you might have been attending when I shared last spring that our principal at the end of the year in his end of year meeting with me surprised me by saying that in his opinion, he thinks home visiting in general is going to sunset in this state because of the concerns about visitor safety, staff safety. So, and that was just a big surprise to me, since I've been the only one doing home visits in our district for over 20 years. So I haven't felt unsafe, very rarely anyway. So anyway, so I'm glad to hear there might be some focus on it so it doesn't sunset, so to speak.
Well, right. And when you think about the goals, it is absolutely opposite of what the goals look like, because there's no goal that says we have to meet them in their home. Like Laura asked, like, what are we calling it? Right. Because does home need to be in there? It's a one-on-one visit. And frankly, like, right, people are doing it in their buildings and perhaps via Zoom. And so to that administrator, I would like politely and cautiously push back and say, but the visits across the state have expanded, and many of our counties are have joined forces with Healthy Families America. I know Ramsey, I think Anoka Hennepin, like our counties are really, really, really actively out there with healthy families. And yeah, I feel like, I hope that we're going to go the other way, right? Like you're saying.
Yeah. And in terms of data, you asked about, Laura, about effectiveness. I don't have my finger on that anymore like I used to, 30 years ago when I was doing it in Wisconsin. But for families, at that point, the research showed they liked being on their own turf. I don't know that's necessarily as universal anymore. I mean, I've met with families wherever they want to, including in a room at school. But most of them choose to be somewhere else. And that could be because of associations they have with formal education, in the school setting. Anyway, so anyway, I'm talking too much about home visiting. We were trying to move on. But yeah, thanks for this discussion. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's huge. It too takes me way back, Nancy, to my own experiences. I was just going to say I've met parents at McDonald's, and there are many, many reasons that families don't want you to come to their home, right? Sometimes it's an embarrassment of the conditions. I've had men who have met me at the front door who have said, "You are not coming into this house." And she feels safer if she meets in a park or another setting. And, I mean, there's just a whole myriad of reasons. And again, it's just meeting families where they're at. And I don't mean in a place, I mean, where the parent feels the most comfortable. Yeah. So good. Well, this is a great, great conversation. Thank you so much, Laura, for bringing this up. And we'll talk about this again. So let's move to Yuji's question, which is huge also, about, I'll just throw it out there. We are not going to solve this problem in the next 20 minutes. In terms of compensation and standards and fairness and things like that. The one thing as my own little preamble to this is, first of all, at NPenn, and is that, no, not there. I'm going to share this again. So for anybody listening outside of Minnesota, since I am not originally from this state, I do feel it's very necessary for me to state a number of things. One, of course, parenting education happens all over. It is not just in Minnesota. And it is very high quality parenting education in many, many places. I worked for a number of years with a cooperative extension system. And one of the, in fact, home visit, when I was in Wisconsin, they had a very strong home visiting program. that worked with the Children's Trust Fund in Wisconsin, and they sponsored the cooperative extension system in Wisconsin, sponsored a conference on home visiting and brought parenting educators. One of the first things I did in the early 90s was to create a resource guide of all the parenting education resources in the state of Wisconsin. And that was just in the state of Wisconsin. There are a number of wonderful, wonderful programs that have been funded through the United Way. There are research-based programs that, I mean, I can provide a link again, I have to dig it up. But there are parenting education programs that happen in prisons, right? And Northwest or Oregon, Idaho, Washington, they used to have a National Parenting Educators Conference every year. I saw David Walsh speak there, Marty Erickson spoke there, it was very big. So I just want to put it out there that Minnesota is not the only game in the country, in the world. There are many, and there are many parenting educators who are in other countries that don't call themselves parenting educators, but very much do what the parenting educators in Minnesota do. In fact, in my own struggle to find other people who do models similar to ECFE, because a lot of parenting education is high intensity, short term, yada, yada, easier to measure. I found those models in other countries. So what makes Minnesota different is we have the teacher's license. There is no other state in the country that has the teacher's license for parenting. And again, this teacher's license also runs ECFE through schools. Now, there may be community programs related to ECFE, but that's that pipeline. So in other places, you have all this parenting education that's going on outside of school districts, right? Or maybe through community education in school districts, but it's just not what we do here, and it's not the ECFE. And so, so Minnesota is unique that way. And because there's that teacher's license, there are these higher education programs that crank out parenting educators that, can you tell I've written about this? Anyway, that in my own comparison of other places, like we are, quote unquote, a gold standard in that we follow a teacher's license that has two dimensions to it that many programs that support the development of professionals who do parenting education work do not do, which is the content piece and the pedagogical piece. And a lot of programs, informal or formal or whatever, that support parenting educators' delivery of programs kind of will prepare them more from a content perspective, right? What is it that you're teaching? And where I believe we are better off in terms of teacher preparation is that, as those of you who are licensed teachers know, you also get the methodology about the pedagogical aspect of how do you create curriculum, how do you design programs, how do you do different teaching methods, how do you integrate technology in your practice, how do you evaluate your programs, you do student teaching. So that's far different as a teacher preparation program than I would say other programs are doing, have the resources to do, because, and thank Betty Cook and the others who were here in the late 70s and the early 80s, and Jerry Hughes, right, got that development of the teacher license, which when you have that license, that's what creates the quality preparation. So there are other programs that help, higher education programs that do help to prepare people who go into parenting education. And then this gets into sort of the national view, but it's very disparate, right? And this gets into the challenge with compensation. And this has been going on for a really long time. It just looks really different depending on what you're looking at, right? ECFE is only one model. It's a very good model, in my opinion. It's a very hard model to evaluate, but when we think about adults and we think about parenting and we think about learning, right? I believe that it's a very, very effective model, but it's certainly not the only one. And it's not a very well-funded model when we look at evidence-based programs. And so, but then we look at early intervention programs and we look at programs that are aimed at specific populations. And there's a lot, and you look at like PACE, right? The PACER program and programs that go out to support parents with children with special needs, so it's just that parenting education is very, very disparate around the world. It is, I think one of the things, again, that Minnesota has is because ECFE is a program that runs through the school districts, we can all have a weekly conversation about this, right? But if you look nationwide, it looks very different from state to state to state, from nonprofit to their religious-based programs. There are whether it's a nonprofit and they have a certain orientation around particular groups of families, that's what that looks like. There are, anyway, so I won't go on. It's just, there are standards. And if you go to NPEN, and I will, and the people, bless the people with NPEN who have been working together to create some consistency around standards of effective practice for parenting educators. I would say if you're going to look for something, go to NPEN first, because that's where that is. So yes, there are standards. We have standards. There are standards there. Right. Missouri started the Parents as Teachers program. Thank you, Nancy, for that reminder. So I'll get off my soapbox. Hi, Ellen. I see you're here. But I think so the standards are there, but it's a huge, very complicated, messy, we're not like social workers. We're not like, and then we run into all the people who are doing parenting education, like social workers. And, when I was a nutritionist, I did parenting education, right? Was I trained? No. Right. And anyway, but, when you also look at sort of the sanctioned groups that reach families, social workers, therapists, especially, pediatricians, there was a real interest. Heather had a real interest in pediatricians doing parenting education, because quite honestly, that's where a lot of parents are going to go for advice, right? In your pediatrician's office, and ask them about your baby's behavior or their developmental growth or whatever. And most pediatricians are not trained in parenting education, in parenting. Anyway, all right, I'm going to stop talking, but I just needed to put some of that out there.
So, Susan, you mentioned NPEN. I'm I'm NPEN council member, and I'm in 2 committees of NPEN. I think NPEN is, as you said, NPEN is really doing good job, good work, a lot of effort put in this, make the standard. I think it's the priority of the standard is about the standard for the competencies of parent educators. So it's they do have, there is a committee like called Advocacy and Policy Committee, and they used to try to make like the medical, the insurance covers parent education, right? So they made effort towards that, but it didn't come out result. And also NPEN trying to make connection with American Academy of Pediatrics, because AAP, they announced a policy statement last year, I think 2022, saying parent education is a universal prevention, for horizontally and vertically, in the system, right? So we try to make a connection with them, so I feel like so yes, there are lots of certifications, and licensure is only Minnesota, but there are, for example, New York State, they have a certification. It calls NICEPAP. But till now, I have not heard any people try to make the standard for payment, for compensation. For example, in Minnesota, yes, in the teacher's contract, but if you count it as hourly rate, right? So if you count it as hourly rate, so first of all, teachers pay, it's not that high, and then counted as hourly rate. So normally we talked about this within PC before. I remember it was about $32 to $40 per hour. So if you work part-time, work for other organizations, you paid for that dollar. It's really a low pay, right? If you think about that, compared to the investment we invested, like the academic, learning and all that learning and the competencies, we're required to be a parent educator. That pay, if we look at psychologists and social workers and all of that, their hourly pay is much higher, right? Therapists, so they're much higher. But what we are doing is not less than them. So I feel like this is really something we, I'm thinking, I was talking, like, because right now we are budgeting for our program, talk about the budget. That is how it came out when we were budgeting the expense for the program. And I was asked how much parent educators are paid. I had no idea. I mean, like, it's so various, between. So one of my colleagues, and she's in New York City, she charges $170 per hour for her service, right? And then I know another person in New York City, she charges $145 per hour. And I had a conversation with Sarah Hardy the other day, and she mentioned at ECFE parent educators, they came to an agreement. Is the hourly pay is $150 for direct contact with parents. So I feel like, personally, I think that is a good, a good fair rate, right? However, I think, this requires effort to really, like, make it the standard, make the field. So I was talking with, other colleagues, say maybe we can promote this through MPIN. I'm a MPIN council member, and she is too. And also, like, she's also NICEPAP in New York, this organization, a credential for parent educator. And then we have Menafee, right? So if we can unite several big organizations, I mean Menafee is huge. Think about how many parent educators we have at Menafee. So if we can build this, that is what I'm thinking. So I just want to throw this out to to just see what you think.
Yeah, this discussion. So I think a good place for us to start, and I know this UG doesn't help you at all, but if we could only come to some agreements here in the state of Minnesota, what an accomplishment that would be, right? Since we all need to be licensed. And we're a long ways along. It's a 50-year-old program. I mean, I've only lived in the state 20 years, so I don't have that kind of longevity with ECFE. Other programs in Children's Trust Fund programs in Wisconsin that Susan was talking about earlier, yes, we were paid deplorably there. It was a huge increase for me to come to Minnesota because I happened to get hired by a district that had their ECFE staff and parent educators on their master contract. And so I based on my degrees and my years of experience, I make the same amount that any other licensed teacher makes. I'm fortunate. And somebody else had asked the question, where have districts gotten? I think, Carissa, you were saying that you haven't heard anything about that yet in your district. I don't work for a district that is in that situation, but I have had people say their districts haven't responded in a very positive way when they said, isn't this a new requirement? Don't you need to put us on the master contract now? And they didn't get, yeah, we're going to do that for you. No, it was, well, we're in the evaluation stage. So I think all those things you listed, UG, about resources, if we all got together, but man, we need to get our act together here in Minnesota too, somehow.
My brain's been going in so many different directions, I think, especially because of the disparate nature of the field. However, you know, and I'm married to a labor economist, and so there's there've been like discussions, and I've also had discussions with individuals who are in parenting who go into private practice and trying to figure out how much do you charge, right? And they're doing a lot of market research to figure out what is that rate that that people will pay, right? I mean, it's capitalism. It's what will people pay? But as we're talking, you know, and Nikki's question about what are the wage differences even within the state, within, you know, ECFE, you know, one thing I'm wondering is, because ECFE has this 50-year-old program, because it is a 50-year-old statewide program that is very legitimized by coming through school districts, having a teacher's license, and all of those things that people understand, right? That's the other thing. You can say, I'm a watercolor artist. No offense to watercolor artists, I don't even know any, but it's like people might go, well, what does that mean? Like, I don't know what that means in terms of work. And so because we have all this legitimization in Minnesota and this history, if we can also identify sort of that standard of pay almost on an hourly basis with benefits and stuff like that the parenting educators in Minnesota get, maybe that might be useful to parenting educators in other jurisdictions, right? In other states who are grappling with a similar thing. So if they're, and I don't know, my guess is it still is going to be an uphill struggle. I mean, usually I would be curious how your agency best determined what they are paying the parenting educators, you know, for you.
Thank you for asking that question, Suzanne. I mean, right now, because I'm at the administration, right? So right now, so for the teaching, we're trying to, because we didn't have any standard, so we made an agreement, like trying to for teach one class like 60 to 75 minutes, mostly like 60 minutes. We ranged the $70 to $100 for each session, for teaching each session. Depends on the class, the size of the class, because we need to survive too, right? So, so this is like two hands. And I feel like, to be honest, for experienced parent educators, if, the group could be like, reach minimal size, I hope in the future we can, get at, $100 rate for, I feel that is kind of a fair rate, because we don't pay for the preparation time, right? And so that is our current effort. I appreciate like this organization, especially the executive director, she agrees with, values of parent educators. And even though we have difficulty, we still want to pay the parent educators fairly. So I really appreciate that. That is one, of the thing attracted me to, to this organization. So I think, yes, I feel like, if we want to make this field grow or make this career sustainable, like if we don't, there will be less and less people would willing to become parent educators. And so this, the strange thing is, on one hand, we cannot find parent educators. There's a shortage of parent educators. And then on the other side, parent educators who are licensed, they are not paid. They, people expect them to volunteer, right? So, this is just so conflict that, I feel we need to figure out. Not within 20 minutes.
I told you. Okay, I have a very quick question, and you all can answer however you want to. So I'm writing a short piece for NCFR about family educator preparation and support in technology. And so this is my question. Where do you get your professional development for using technology in your work? So if I was writing a survey question, I would ask, like, was it from your program, Laura? Like your recent program, how much technology integration did you have in your preparation program? Is it on the job, from professional development, training and that sort of thing that they bring in and they offer to you? Is it everyday experiences and support and talking to the person next to you, or bringing in like your tech guy, and asking questions? Just how do you get your professional development now around technology integration in your practice? Let's start with Jennifer. We'll do Brady Bunch and just kind of go around.
Some of it is from our tech department. We have someone dedicated to our building who's not just fixing computers. It's not that kind of tech, but it's like tech in the classroom. And but I would say most of it is just asking my neighbor, asking my colleague, like, how do you do this? How does this work? I can't make this work. How do I fix it?
Yeah. Nancy?
We have a really great tech support department. There's they've really expanded it, and they are wonderfully useful and helpful. And yeah.
And by tech support, you don't mean the people that help, like if your files have crashed and your computer doesn't start, like the IT people. You mean more like technology in education people?
I guess I don't know that Adam and Craig and the other guy, he's not in our building, so I don't remember his name, that they have necessarily a background in education and technology. I don't know.
Okay.
But you're right. I guess it's primarily, they try to help us link to things that are relevant to teachers and useful. And I think some of that, they glean from staff people, what's been really useful to them. And then they try to, I don't know if I'm answering your question, Susan.
No,
Sorry.
you are.
Okay.
And digital citizenship ethics.
Yeah, I know that's a big thing at the high school, and ethics certainly. In early childhood, we don't, get into digital citizenship as much. And I haven't with my parents. I sometimes that will come up as a topic they want to talk about, because I'll have a group that has older children as well, and it comes up as kind of a side topic. But I use Common Sense Media for a lot of resources for those kinds of questions from my families. Yeah.
Great. Okay, thank you. Laura?
As a new staff member, I'm not sure what's available yet. I think they have integrated technology specialists per building within the schools, or maybe distributed that they hit multiple buildings. And I would say most of my technology is self-directed learning about what I want to do. But I'm finding that even just simple tools that maybe we used in the grad program to involve parents in parent education are hard to use because we don't support technology for parent education. So asking about, do we have maybe an iPad set that parents could use, so that we don't have to assume that all of our families are bringing phones to do something. Those are things that haven't been addressed or thought about before, about getting technology in parents' hands to use in the parent education classroom for their own learning.
Mm-hmm. Great. Okay. And we'll do this quickly. So, Carissa, how about you?
Yeah, lots of just figuring out myself or asking my neighbor. We do have a good tech department that they're not by building, they're just district, but they do seem to do a good job of just everything, just minor technical issues as well as digital citizenship stuff and things like that. So they have always been useful when I've tried to use them. And we have had a sprinkling of maybe 3 times in the 6 years I've been with Mountain View, had somebody from tech come in and do a specific training on something, but not super regular.
Nikki?
I have a few answers. I agree with people that said colleagues and learning as we go, but I have a couple things too. The tech department for sure is helping us navigate things, but I have the good fortune of working in a couple of our high schools as well because of the work with the teen parents. And so we have media specialists, and the media specialists send out emails. They send out like their media minute for the week. And so, for example, like our media specialist at one of our schools was just talking about that he can create curated lists of databases, websites, books, those sorts of things for classes. But he often curates things for the staff and things that, so educational things, applications that they're encouraging us to explore or use. And these are things that have been vetted by the district. And interestingly, our district is undergoing through Arctic Fox, like a security. They're looking at how secure we are. Because of the recent breaches. I think it was Rochester, perhaps, for sure Minneapolis, but we've had some pretty large data breaches in the state through people, educators not realizing that they couldn't click on certain links or that sort of thing. So we are also getting these security type things, videos every week that we have to watch now. So it touches on a little bit different thing, but still relevant.
Great, thank you so much. Even a small sampling of you is super helpful, because I know that my own sort of a knowledge base on this has changed over the years, compared to the resources that you all have had and use and your knowledge and stuff. So thank you. And thank you for today for a fabulous conversation. Laura, I hope you'll be back and join us again, and I'll be posting this. And happy new school year, y'all. Oh, and also topics, you probably got my email yesterday or the other day about topics for the thing. I'm gonna see if I can post this again down here in chat so everybody has it. I think that's right. Anyway, so please contribute your topics, and then we'll post those also on Friends of Family Education and stuff like that, so people can tune in. So, all right, folks, see ya.